Short Tales, Stories Behind the Hood. I'm your host, Frank Vargas, aka Traveling Frankie. I'm not even going to tell you how this works, because you guys do know how this works. Someone sits there, I sit here, we have a conversation, I just happen to post them somewhere, and that somewhere is YouTube. So I'm in Pennsylvania with Matt Cable from Bogo Enterprises, Bogo Systems.
Bogo Systems.
I just asked that and I still got it wrong. You know, that's what happens when we're on the road for so long. Matt, thank you so much for taking time and out of your busy day, and especially having me in your neck of the woods where Bogo is at, and I'm going to ask you all of that, but you guys know how this works. We're going to get to know what Bogo do, how they do what they do, and why they do what they do. But before all of that, we're going to get to know Matt right here. Who is he, where he comes from, why is he doing here, why the welding industry, right? Why? Matt, so first of all, where are we right now?
We're in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, so we're about 20 minutes south of Pittsburg.
And is this where the company's always been?
Originally, we were actually in Pittsburg.
Okay.
Our first building was actually an old barn that they got down on Carson Street in the south side, and then they moved into our first actual address was an old schoolhouse on Carson Street, 3001 West Carson Street down in Pittsburgh. Right.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Because you are fourth generation.
I'm fourth generation.
Right.
Yes.
And the company, you said that it's 76 years old.
Yes.
So
1948.
Wow, that's amazing. U.S. made, 1948. Kudos. But now let's go back to you. Where are you from?
I'm from here originally, about half an hour north.
Really?
Yeah.
So born and raised.
Yeah.
You never left. You always stayed.
Yes.
All right. Now, growing up as a fourth generation, so your dad, your granddad, your great granddad, right? How was being raised in the business, and was there something that you always saw as the business, like, hey, that's going to be my future as well, or you didn't want any part of it, and then gradually you just, this is what we do?
Yeah. So granddad was always come work for Bogo, come work for Bogo, and I wanted nothing to do with it when I was younger. So
Gotcha.
It's like anything but coming to work.
Was it
for Bogo.
because it was family, or was it because you just didn't connect at that moment with what Bogo was?
Didn't really connect at the
Okay.
moment with what it was. Kind of wanted to do my own thing.
Gotcha.
I was working in high school and college. I was working in a summer camp, and
Okay.
so I thought I wanted to do something with wilderness adventure with kids.
Got it.
Christian ministry outreach was a really important thing to me.
Okay.
So I, when you go to college, you don't really know what you want to do. So you kind of graduate through some different things. So I was looking towards that, and
Of
then
course.
I talked to my boss. My last summer I worked there, I said, if I'm looking to get into this for a job, just give me an idea. What kind of money do you talk? She's like, I make $18,000 a year. I said, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
I want to have a family, so let's look into something else.
All right.
So
That's definitely something that will make you think twice about that career path, right? But growing up as a kid, aside from that, just giving back, the youth and wilderness and all that,
Mhm.
what were you into?
So I was always very involved with like my youth group at my church.
Okay.
And again, I spent 7 summers at Legionnaire Camp and Conference Center as a camper, and then I worked there for 5. My son is actually, my 17-year-old is working there right now.
Wow.
For the last couple weeks, and we'll pick him up next Friday.
Was that something that your family was into?
Yes.
Or so it kind of, that's also generational as well.
Yeah, I mean, we found out about it through my church.
Okay.
So I went, first time in like 2nd grade, and then
Wow.
instead of Boy Scouts, we always did the Legionnaire Camp and Conference Center path.
Gotcha. So now you are 18, you ask the questions, hey, how much money am I going to make? And they hit you with that whopping number, right? So what was the first thing that you said, well, do I look at Bogo now?
No.
Or
Still not.
All right, so what did you do then?
So I was really, again, I love working with kids, helping youth grow and learn all that kind of stuff. So I actually went into teaching.
Okay.
So
Teaching what?
I got a master's in elementary education. So
teaching
teaching all subjects, teaching younger kids.
Gotcha.
I didn't think that I was smart enough to teach high school. So I'm like, I can do the elementary school teaching thing and interact.
And dealing with teenagers, it's a whole new level.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how long did you teach?
So I didn't actually ever have a full-time teaching job.
Okay.
I was a substitute teacher for 2.5 years. And while I was going to school for my master's degree for education, I started working for FEIN Power tools, which was my first real job.
Yeah,
so,
adult job, right?
Yes, and that's where I actually learned all about sales.
Okay.
And so as I was working there, and then I was doing student teaching and substitute teaching and all that, it got really old and tiring. So
Gotcha.
I kind of learned from trade shows that I was doing at FEIN that sales is essentially teaching. So I was
Right.
like,
Just another kind of teaching,
I
but
can
at the end
do
of the
this
day.
sales thing. So
Yeah.
I started there full time. And
So
that's
they
where-
brought you on board as sales?
Yes,
Gotcha.
I started as
In-
inside sales.
Okay, in what area? Here as well?
So that was FEIN Power Tools was located in Pittsburgh, and we had the distribution for the U.S.
And how much traveling were you doing? What kind of trade shows were you doing back then?
So we would do woodworking shows, we would
Okay.
do the welding show, we would do all kinds of different shows, open houses, all that kind of stuff. So I really started traveling and getting out and
Okay.
exploring the country, which has always been fascinating to me.
I know that's one of the things why I think most of us do what we do. So now you are there for how many years?
7 years.
7.
Yeah.
What happened and what came next?
So speaking of travel, so
Okay.
I was promoted up to regional coordinator for the Midwest.
Okay,
So I was Nebraska down to Texas,
gotcha.
and I was traveling 3 to 4 weeks a month.
Yep.
And Dad had always said, "Hey, I know you're interested in other stuff and doing your own thing. That's wonderful. If you're ever interested in coming back to work for the company, let's have a conversation and we'll set it up." So I was good doing all that travel for a while, and then my son was born. I was like, this is a lot of travel. So I talked to Dad and I said, "Hey, I've learned that I really enjoy sales and
Yeah.
interacting with people. I'd be interested in coming and having an opportunity to come back to Buggo and start up with that."
When you say back to Bogo,
So technically,
okay,
I worked in the shop the summer of my senior year. It was
Got
my
it.
first experience working at Buggo.
okay,
And that was a really good experience to learn how we make the product, what it's like to be in the shop, manufacturing, assembling, learning how to run that kind of equipment and stuff. So that was the first experience I had working at Buggo.
okay, got it. Yeah, because when you say back, I'm like, all right, wait a minute. So, great granddad
Yes,
founded the company.
yes.
Why? What was he into? And why was it that he said, there's something here, maybe I can build a machine?
So he was actually a salesman for Lincoln Electric.
Okay, got it.
And he traveled all over the country. And he actually met Everett Livesey, who was the first inventor of Buggo.
Okay,
And got to be pretty good friends with him, and they talked through different things. So when they founded the company in 1948, it was called DNR Electric, was the original name of the company.
okay,
So he founded it, and we were actually the first Lincoln Electric authorized repair center in the world because of his connection to
in the
Lincoln.
world. Wow.
Yes.
All right.
So we started there, and then when he was talking to Everett Livesey about just life,
Future and stuff, right?
Everett decided that it was time to play some golf and not sell the stuff anymore. So Grant bought the patent rights, and
Okay.
then we kind of ran from there with it.
And so, how long was great granddad involved before your granddad came on board?
So Granddad Herb came on in 1957. So he ran the company. Well, my great grandfather Grant ran the company until he passed
Gotcha.
in the 80s.
All right.
So
So now who's the person that has run the company the longest? Is it your dad or
my grandfather.
your grandfather?
So he worked for 57 years for the company.
Got it.
Dad worked for 44 years.
Okay.
So Granddad had a really long career.
Yeah.
at Buggo. Yeah.
And you are so far
This is 16.
16.
Yeah.
So when you come from FEIN Tools and you were already exposed to travel, tools, trade shows and all that, and when you came on and talked to that and said, "Hey, I think I'm ready to just kind of stay here and do and build the company and help the company," what was the position at that time?
So my very first job, and I had always said to Dad, I said, "I'm never going to come work for you on Carson Street. That building is old." So he started looking,
Okay.
and found this place in 2008. And so once he found this place, I said, "Yeah, it's a good time for me to start coming on board." So my very first job was we moved into the schoolhouse on Carson Street in 1957. So we had 50 years of stuff crammed into this building. So
Got it.
Dale, Kyle, and I got to spend 6 months cleaning out the old school building. So that was my very first job was, okay, time to clean up and help things move.
Did you understand your dad's vision at that moment when you came on board? Like you understood exactly what Bogo wanted to be, or did you have a completely set of different ideas from how your dad was doing things? Not that they're wrong or bad, just different because it's different generations and all that. So did you have a different vision?
No, it was pretty similar.
Okay.
Knowing what we built and how we help people solve problems, and when we
Correct.
talk about being power tools for welders,
Yeah.
really trying to help the operator, keep them safer, keep them,
Got it. What do you say was probably the biggest challenge on now working for a bigger company, coming now working for your dad? What would you say it was the biggest challenge?
It was so at FEIN we were really essentially a wholesaler.
Okay.
We didn't manufacture anything.
Gotcha.
We basically had the warehouse, and then we would send it out to distributors from
Okay.
there. So this was, I really didn't have any background in manufacturing. So learning that side of things, and you actually have to build all of this, was a whole new experience for me.
How was, because now you're coming into Buggle, the
Mhm.
son of, and people see you as that. Now you are involved in the company. It's not the summers anymore. Now you are part of the company. Was the transition on working with employees and somewhat, let's say, in a way, reporting to you? How was that transition?
Well, I mean, the nice thing, the way that Dad set it up, is that okay, if you're going to come over and take this over someday, you really got to learn all of it.
Ground up,
So
yeah.
I started in the engineering department, so I could learn the equipment, how it all worked, customer service, trade, troubleshooting, things like that. Moved into various different departments throughout the company, so I really had the chance to try and understand truly what everybody had to do in their roles and participate in that. So I did engineering for a bit. I worked in accounting. I did our ERP implementation.
Okay.
So I ran IT for a while. I didn't have as much again to do with the manufacturing side of
Gotcha.
things, but more focusing towards the sales. And then I moved into sales, which is what my background is and what I know how to do.
Correct. Do you? You like sales?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. Right. I think so. Now, what do you think is the hardest thing about sales? And I'm gonna take the no's and rejections out of the way,
Mhm.
because that's just part of it. What is the hardest thing for you about sales?
I mean, I always kind of approach it trying to solve somebody's problem. They're calling you for a reason. They have an issue of something that they're struggling with. If we can give them a solution that makes their job and their life easier, that is a guaranteed win. One of the other things that was different coming here from FEIN was the international side of things. FEIN was only domestic, so I had no international experience.
That's a whole new animal.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's been a really big pleasure to learn and just interact with different people in different cultures and different places and all that.
Pricing structures.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely a big deal.
Yeah.
Now 18 years in with Buggle, right?
16.
Yeah. And knowing what you know about the industry, what is something that you say that has changed so much from when you started 16 years ago to now, taking technology out of the equation?
Well, that's not an easy one.
I know.
And it's kind of related to technology, but it's kind of not. But the world feels smaller, if that makes sense, than it used to.
Explain that.
Much more connected, much more. It's easier to get a hold of people. Everything is faster.
Correct.
And if I go back to when I started at FEIN, I didn't even have a cell phone when I started. So I mean, I'd have voicemail.
Yeah.
And you could get back to it the next day.
Correct.
Nowadays, somebody calls, they want to call back within
it's
10 minutes.
a double-edged sword.
Exactly.
Because you can't hide anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. And sometimes when you're a workaholic and you just like, I think I can call them back. It's not an emergency, and you put it down and you go like, no, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. But
yeah.
How many employees do you guys have here at Buggle?
We have 45.
45.
Yeah.
And I know that you have people that have been here for over 30 years.
Yes.
Right, 30 something,
Yep.
and so on and so on.
We actually have a couple that are over 40.
Really?
Yeah.
That is amazing. That speaks on the company and you guys, and how family oriented the company can be. You are doing most of the sales out there. You're the face.
Yeah.
But you're also the president.
Yeah.
And everything else in between. What's easier, sales or being the president of the company?
Sales.
He didn't even have to think about that one. It's like, I know exactly where I'm going with this one. Is it because the day-to-day, the people, or some of those decisions that sometimes, what do you say that?
Part of what we're going through as a company is we're trying to grow and evolve and to change.
Gotcha.
We've done it that way forever. This is good enough. But in today's day and age, we've got to be able to move forward and look at things differently. So like we did our tour with Keith earlier, brought him in a year and a half ago, and he's able to look at, okay, why do we do it this way?
Correct.
Let's look at how can we maybe do it differently, be more efficient, or So trying to bring in some of those outside voices
Correct.
to help us do
And let them do their job.
Exactly.
Because that's one of the big keys. Sometimes most of us, we need the help. All right, let's bring someone. And once they are here, they have a different set of ideas and they ask you those questions. So why do you guys do this way? And sometimes you have an answer, sometimes you go like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, that's what we've done.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you fight those new ideas in the beginning because it's a process, right?
Yeah, and change inherently is hard.
Correct, it is, totally. How much of a worldwide is Bogo known? Like, what area? It's outside of the US. What's your next big market?
When Granddad started setting up the international side of things, Europe was our biggest market outside the US. Right now, our biggest market outside the US is Latin America. Europe has got a little bit more challenging. A lot of competition over there, price concerns, dollar versus other currencies, all that kind of stuff is more of a challenge. But right now, Latin America is our biggest market out of the US.
Really? And that being one of your biggest market outside of the US, what about the actual technical part and the safety part? Because, I come from a Latin country, and I know that sometimes most of Latin countries, we rig things in ways that it's just not safe. Let's just call it what it is. How do you guys go about that? And do you guys actually run into those things? Or you guys do enough training and make sure by the time you guys walk away, all right, they're doing it by the book?
In terms of product support or
technical support and just the safety part of things, because at the end of the day, so the machine does this one thing, but there's other parts components, like the torch part or these other things that could be a hassle if not handled the right way. And because I've run into this a lot when I'm traveling abroad, I'll give them kudos because they find ways of making things work that there's no way I would have ever thought of that. But also there comes the safety part. How do you guys handle the safety part in that side of the world?
So I have a gentleman named Norman Galliana, who is my Latin American manager.
Okay.
We sell through distributors,
Okay.
So we have good distributors in each country.
Gotcha.
And then he goes around and does training with them so that they're equipped to sell the product properly and make sure that people are safe. So depending on the application, if he's actually going in with the distributor person, he's handling all of that in terms of, here's how the machine works, I can help you qualify and figure out whatever you're working on procedure-wise. Application, I can help you solve it, how to use the equipment, how to keep it safe. And then we also train our distributors, salespeople to be able to do the same thing.
Gotcha.
So we rely on them for a lot of that.
Got it. Makes sense. And I know you're married, right?
Yes.
And you have 4 kids.
I do have 4 children.
Are any of the kids into the industry, or they are what you were back in the day?
I teased that, when I was 17, like my son is now, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I've always said, right now he is actually in trade school.
Okay.
So K&M-Mac, they do half at technical school and half in K&M-Mac. So he's doing small motor repair. We're able to do that right now. So I said, we're encouraging the trade route because everybody needs trades these days.
Are you kidding?
And it's a guaranteed job.
Correct.
So I said, okay, go ahead and do this and find something that you'll get a guaranteed job in that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And then you can decide what you want to do.
Correct.
And we said to him specifically, hey, if you're interested someday, let me know and there'll be an opportunity for you to come work at Buggo, but only if you want to. Yeah. If you don't want to, I'm not going to force you to.
Yeah, it's just the idea itself of calling yourself and having maybe that 5th generation. It's got to feel good, but only if they want to.
Yeah.
Because that's such a badge of honor.
Yeah.
For someone, I'm 5th generation, and that sounds good.
Yeah. Well, and again, the nice thing is you look at it differently when you make the choice that this is what you want to do. So I chose to come back and do this rather than if you're going to do this, it kind of rubs you the wrong way. You don't have a different appreciation for it as well.
100%. How much travel do you do now?
I do a lot.
Yeah.
So my wife teases me that I travel a lot at FEIN. So now I go less often, but I go further. So like next week, I'm actually flying over to China and Korea. So typically, recently it's been about once a month. It's not been terrible. There's times that it's more. There's times that it's less. It just depends on. So
now let's talk really about what is Buggo. I'm a new guy in the industry. I have no idea about anything.
Okay.
Explain Buggo to me.
Sure. So first, a little backstory for you.
Okay.
So where the name Buggo came from, our parent company name is actually Weld Tooling Corporation.
Okay.
So we bought the first machine, it was the Everett Livesey multi-purpose machine,
Okay.
and we redesigned it and went to sell it. So Gramp called it the Bug-0, thinking the next one
That's
would be
what.
the
Gotcha.
Bug-1, the Bug-2, and Buggo stuck.
Huh.
So that's where the name Buggo came from,
Okay.
which is
All
kind of
right.
fun.
It is.
So we manufacture and sell a system of drives that run on rack and pinion rail for positive traction. So we talk about it being a power tool for a welder.
Okay.
Basically, you can lay down a rail with one of our bugs that will carry the torch down your entire length of the rail. So you have consistent, repeatable path and travel speed. So you have no stops and starts, very good, clean, consistent speed the whole way down the joint.
What's the biggest and most difficult, or one of the most difficult things that you've had to put together for a customer?
We actually just did a really cool one. Jeff Nelson, my technical sales and applications engineer, came up with a system for a rock crusher. So they have these giant rock crushers, and they'll sometimes get pieces that will jam up the assembly.
Okay.
So people had to go down with a really long torch and cut that out.
Oh,
And
I
there's
see.
massive pressure, so it's inherently very dangerous to
Correct,
set something down there. So he came up with a modification to one of our MDS systems that had extended racking on it and an arm and a camera, so that you could put the rail in this thing, drive the bug down, and then you could see what you were doing. So you could cut off with the machine and then drive it back out. So it keeps people a lot safer. It was a really cool application.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds pretty cool. So you were saying also that you guys did this ring, I guess, that it was for a submarine or something.
Yeah.
What was the dimensions of that?
We've done, I think the biggest one we've done is 44 feet diameter, bent rigid rail.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
And so you guys do it here,
Mhm.
and of course ship it and all that. When you guys put together a rig like that, do you guys actually have to now go to the customer and fine tune and install and do all that for them, or by then they already know how to do everything?
They typically know how to do everything at this point.
Okay.
So I mean, originally back in the day, then we might have had to have somebody out there, but typically these days, for that size of a project, they know what they're doing because they're looking for a replacement for what they already had.
Gotcha. And what are your biggest challenge nowadays?
Finding people is going to be a big challenge going forward. I think that's for
I almost took that answer away, but I'm going to let it in. Yeah.
Because, again, I've got wonderful people that work for us. Finding new people that are interested in wanting to learn how to do that side of things is going to be more of a challenge going forward, for sure.
It is. It is definitely, and you're right. Every single company, every industry, in the trade especially, if it's not techy enough, we're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens, and I think it's important that we attach ourselves with programs like that where the youth can have access and just see other things versus just a phone, a computer, a tablet or something like that. So definitely we got to do our job on exposing them to other things.
The other thing I was going to say that's going to be a big challenge is getting things out of people's head. Tribal knowledge and training that to the next generation is going to be a big challenge that we're trying to work on with some of the documentation stuff, but it's hard.
Yeah. How do you try to find people, knowing that those programs are out there? How do you try to find people, or do you run into people and sometimes you're like, oh, they look good, they kind of check all the outside boxes, I don't know internally and everything else, but how do you go about that?
I mean, it depends on what role we're looking for at the time. We use obviously all the standards like Indeed, LinkedIn, and all that stuff. But depending on who you have conversations with and who may be open to different things, you can sometimes feel that, or it just depends on what specific role you're looking
Got it. Would you still want to be the guy doing the traveling, most of the travel like you're doing now, or would you see yourself slowing down if you found the right person?
I enjoy the travel, to be
Okay.
honest. I like getting out and getting in front of customers and talking with people. I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
To get it to continue to grow, we're going to need to bring people on, obviously.
Correct. It can't be everywhere.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the same thing. What we say. Where would you like to see Bob in the next 5-10 years?
I would like to get a step up in technology in our product. A lot of our stuff it's very functional, works very, very well.
Correct.
But with all the technology that's coming in the world today,
Yeah.
I'd really like to look towards, how can we incorporate some of that into our product to make it easier to use, to
For
make
the
it
end user.
more effective. And again, kind of on the techier side of things, like you said, the younger generation particularly, they want to run a bug on this.
Yeah.
So we can get that kind of thing is where I'm trying to go with things.
Gotcha. And it totally makes sense. You gotta meet the demand where the demand is with the mentality that it's out there. And going to the personal side. So you sent me a text yesterday,
Yes.
and you've been brewing beer for a while.
13 years.
13 years. How did you get into that?
So one of my friends,
Aside from drinking beer.
well, obviously, yes.
Yeah.
One of my friends got a Mr. Beer kit for Christmas last year, and he didn't really use it, so he gave it to me. And it's a little plastic 2.5 gallon keg. And I did a kit, and I tried it and thought it was kind of cool. The first one wasn't very good, so I tried ordering some new kits and then worked from there and really liked that. And then I decided that I was going to go and actually get into the 5 gallon batch size. So I started and tried different kits, and I've kind of upgraded my equipment over the years, but it's fun.
I can imagine, because you showed me a few pictures, now all the cans and all the labels of beers that you've had. So the garage has become a brewery, I guess.
Yes.
Was the wife always on board with this?
It keeps me occupied with things to do, so I think she's mostly okay with it. She's definitely used to it. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what's your best beer, according to you? The one that you've made that, I got this on point. What kind?
My one that I make every year for Christmas is a bourbon vanilla imperial porter, and that is
Really?
good. Yeah.
Nice. And how long does that process take?
Brew days probably 4 to 6 hours.
Okay.
And then 2 weeks to ferment and carb. So 2 weeks to a month, depending on the beer.
Nice. Where are you going next?
Next, I'm actually leaving. I'm going to China and Korea.
For how long?
A week.
A week?
Yep.
How do you find? Let me rephrase the question. So when you go somewhere like that, China, Korea, how do you find the connection? How do you find the people itself? Are they buying into what you're trying to do, and vice versa?
Well, the nice thing about this trip is we've actually going over for taking Norman with me from Latin America for training for our partner All Time in Shanghai. So we're going specifically for training.
Oh, okay.
And they actually started as a distributor for us in 1993. So we've known them for 30 years.
Also,
got it.
Well, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, when you go to a trade show, do you think trade shows are important?
Yes.
Yes. And what is the win-win out of a trade show? You go to, of course, building relationships and all that, but do you always come out with at least 1 or 2 new relationships, or at least a good lead out of these trade shows?
Out of most of them, yes.
Got
Not
it.
always, but out of most of them, yes. There's definitely a benefit on that side of things.
Yes. Are you part of any buying group?
We're not.
You're not. Just because, or it has never really, or it's something that you don't see the ROI yet?
We haven't. I mean, we briefly explored. I did IWDC.
Okay.
But we've not really
Gotcha.
been involved with that yet.
Got it.
Because we have such an established distributor network from being around
so long. Yeah. No, I get it. And I get it. For some work, for some doesn't, and why give up something that you already have all the ROI coming in. Now, and we're almost done, guys. I promise you. These particular place, you said that you guys have been here in this building since 2008, right?
Yeah.
And how big of a building is this?
45,000 square feet.
45,000. And you guys say that you have a school nearby.
Yeah.
So what is that school about?
So we have a school set up with all of our equipment so that we can bring customers in for training on how to use the equipment.
Okay.
Or if a customer has an application, hey, can you do this? They'll send us samples of material, and then we will figure out how we will recommend mechanizing it. And then we can do a video conference with them or have them come in person to see how we would do it.
That's pretty cool. And you've always had a school?
Yes.
Some of the other buildings somehow?
Yes, we've always had a school. Training has always been very, very important.
Correct.
One of the things that COVID forced us to do was figure out how to do all this online stuff. So in 2020, when everything was shut down, people couldn't come in to visit. So we got invested in camera equipment. And how do we do, because our product, you got to typically demo it to sell it.
Correct.
So how do you do that when you can't hands-on with it? So it forced us to think about things differently. So we have a setup down there with a camera, web camera for meetings. We've actually sent equipment to a customer, and then we'll have the same equipment here, and we'll have a video conference
wow,
kind of talk through.
Yeah.
So again, it's pretty easy to get here when you're domestic. It's a little bit harder internationally.
Yeah.
So that has been
Comes in handy,
evolved. Yeah.
Got it. And I know you do FabTech Canada, US, Mexico. I saw you there. Essen.
Yep.
What other international or national shows do you guys do?
In previous years, we've done more. Recently, those are the main ones that we're doing.
Okay.
So looking at opportunities further beyond that, we did FEIN Brazil.
Okay.
We've done that a couple times.
Huh.
But yeah.
How is Canada for you guys?
We haven't actually exhibited in Canada for a long time.
Okay.
My rep up there, Wade Wolford, was there this year.
Correct.
And he said that I should come walk it with him next year, so we'll see how it goes for next year.
Cool.
I'll
Awesome.
make a decision from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I want to thank you for taking time of your personal day. It's a Friday, and definitely I was very impressed with the operation because it's something that I've been exposed for many years now. And just to see the hang on work, just everyone doing everything. I love to see things built in America, and it's such a great feeling to see that people still believe in that kind of quality work and tradition, right? And also, I want to thank you for just being a down-to-earth, cool guy. Even though he killed me in bowling. You also won an axe throwing, didn't you?
Nope. We won skeet shooting.
Skeet.
One of my teammates shot perfect, so that helped.
Right? Who does that? Like, who does that? This guy was just, it was from Tomco, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, he went to 7 sprints here, and they got a regional, and pretty much he just beat everyone in most of out of the 4 things, 2 of them. Anyway, so I would love to hate him, but I just can't. But thank you very much for just allowing me to have this conversation, for giving me the tour. Appreciate it. I love just to see that. It was pretty cool. And I see you guys having guys here for 30, 40 something years. It's awesome to see. So thank you, brother, for everything you do for the industry as well.
Yeah.
We need people like you here. And guys, I hope you guys learned something from Buggo, from Matt. So when you see him out there, just approach him and tell him, hey, I want one of those beers. Now you got something in common, right? So now you know how to break the ice. Thank you so much for watching, guys. This is what Torch Tell is all about, just showing the personal side. And of course, we talk about the industry and the company they work for. But at the end of the day, it's just getting to know the person. You know how this works. I'll be somewhere else with somebody else, because if they keep saying yes, who am I to say no? Take care, guys. See you soon.